Oh, yeah. There it is. There's that Wednesday night theme. Every Wednesday night, this segment of the show is called Special Thoughts. And this is Special Thoughts number 1. We gave Wednesday night a try, and it was pretty successful, especially with CW Chanter. So, yeah, I'm going to be doing a regular Wednesday thing. Wednesdays are a little different. It's not really going to be about guests. I may choose to have guests on Wednesdays. But Wednesday, I'm going to take the opportunity to editorialize and give commentary and an opinion, color commentary, if you will, and do that on Wednesdays and then still stick with my format of interviewing people on Fridays and Saturdays. We'll see how that works. So I'm winging it tonight. I'm by myself here in the nyxmedia.com studios. I don't have anyone manning the chat room except for me through my phone. So it is just me and you, the listener. I'll get into why I'm not on camera a little bit. I'll turn that into a public service announcement. How's that? I'm going to get personal tonight. Talk about myself a little bit. Not too much, not in an egotistical way, but just informative way. I've been watching a lot of news on the campfire in Paradise, California. I'll be talking about that. Excuse me, I had spoken about it in a previous show last week when the fire first started. Check out this ending. I dig this ending. Ding, 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 ding. It just kind of builds up, doesn't it? Fades off. I like it. I made that. I don't mind saying. And that way I don't get sued by anybody and I get to show off my music chops a little bit. So thank you so much for joining. I see SKMMA. I see Out of Mind. Thank you so much for joining. I'm going to talk about the events over the past week. I'm going to comment on the aftermath of the doxing scandal involving Joe from the Carolinas, which is, I'm naming him now because it's all out and about and everyone knows. So even though many people knew, I protected his identity last week out of respect because I didn't really know which way this was going. And I didn't want to feed into the effects of the doxing, quite honestly. I just didn't want to play a part in that. I wanted to comment on it for sure, but I didn't want to play a part in that. So if you're joining me tonight, thank you so much. Thank you for being here. And I appreciate it. And I'll talk about the growth of the show a little bit. And we'll get on. Well, I have a good description. So those are the topics we're going to cover. We'll talk about the campfire. I'm going to talk about the direction of this show. And but first, we'll get around to the doxing stuff and how all that kind of played out through the week. Before I do that, I'm going to explain why I'm not on camera. And I'll turn this into a public service announcement. I have this job, and it's a very public job, and I go on camera at least 3 times a week. And over the past week, somehow, I came in contact with MRSA, MRSA, and I got it on my nose. And needless to say, my nose was swollen and inflamed, and it was bad. But I have a great doctor, and they put me on some really strong antibiotics, which really make me sick. But the MRSA is going away, and I think I might be ready for back on camera by this weekend. We'll see. Things are really progressing well. The drugs are just horrible, but but I'm going to turn this into a public service announcement. The doctor told me something in the ER, and this MRSA stuff is pretty serious. It can get into your bloodstream. You can go septic, and they really acted very swiftly because it was on my face, and that's close to your brain. They said that could drain backwards, and I'm not trying to be gross or anything. It's just like, but this is MRSA is really dangerous. And the doctor told me that they had done a study at a hospital and they had swabbed everyone who came out of the hospital. And 50% of the people leaving the hospital showed that they were carriers of colonized MRSA. 50%. So think about that. And this is how I'm turning this into a public service announcement. We all know that illnesses are kind of resistant. Some illnesses are resistant to antibiotics and sulfa drugs. And we're heading into the flu season here. We're heading into the holidays. And think about that as you go out in public and, maybe not run your hand along the handrails, maybe be more conscious of the door handles that you touch and the countertops and wash your hands frequently. This is the doctor assured me this had nothing to do with hygiene or anything else, that you just come in contact with this, that it's out there. And so as you go about, as we get into the holidays and people start going out and shopping and staying busy, be cognizant of that, and also of the flu as well. And this is not an advice show. I'm not trying to be like all that, but I didn't want to lie about why I'm not on camera. I thought it was yeah, I don't know. I think without an explanation, it would have been weird. Like, hey, here she is, and she has this show, and then suddenly she's not on camera. But it's getting better, and I don't mean to go on about that. That's the end of that. That's why you're not seeing me, but you should see me this weekend. But I am here live, have no doubt. I want to talk about the success of the show with C.W. Chanter, and it was an incredible success for this show. With that 2.5 hour show, I got at least 1,000 views, and I picked up 100 new subscribers in 4 days. And when I looked at the analytics, the kind of up and down line, it was kind of more or less flat going along, and then this huge giant spike all at once. It was pretty incredible, and I'm really grateful to CW for coming on and helping to support the show just by giving me a good word. And we had a great conversation on the doxing scandal, and these new subscribers, and it turned me on to all kinds of people. I made new friends because of it. I wound up being a moderator in CW Chanter's chat room for his podcasts. And immediately after that show, I received 6 requests for interviews with people that were paying no attention to me before then, which is okay. I mean, this is how these things happen. It's all timing. It's a little bit of luck. It's a lot of skill, a lot of patience. But all those things come together to make things like this happen. So the channel is taking off. And I just want to thank all of you here. I'm looking down again. The BB blog, Out of Mind. Thank you. The BB blog says, glad I'm getting better. Someone said they got staph once. Yikes. Kill it. Exactly. Yes. They call me karate. SKMMA. They call me karate. All right. Cryptic and weird, but I like cryptic and weird. So anyway, I had this show. It got 1,000 views. I got new subscribers, and this really breathed new life into my psyche, I guess. I have faith in this show, but I had kind of one concept in mind, and I started out with it, and it was not working because I didn't have the audience participation that I'd wanted to. This was going to be like, I was going to have quizzes for viewers and trivia with the guests and stuff. And it all seemed to get a little bit busy, and just doing kind of the funny, kind of smart ass interview thing that I do seemed to start working better. So I dropped the trivia stuff, and but we did 5 questions in 5 minutes with William Poland last week, and that was good. I enjoyed that. So I'll play around with that format, but all that stuff is for the Friday and Saturday show. Here on Wednesdays, I'm gonna just kind of put all that stuff aside and get into some editorializing on whatever's going on. And the aftermath of the doxing scandal, of course, as everyone knows, I don't want to spend too much time overstating the obvious. Joe from the Carolinas didn't post for a couple of days. People were starting to wonder. CW Chanter continued to broadcast on the topic, and it got around. And I was involved in some of the Twitter stuff, and then there was some backlash and back and forth. And I will say, and I'm not speaking out of school on this, I have contact with the Richard Dolan camp, and word came to me that Richard wanted to stay far, far away from this controversy and has no comment and wants nothing to do with any of this. And I understand his position. I understand why he wants to do that. He's just flat out more of an academic. He doesn't really have a political agenda in all this. He's an entrepreneur for sure, which is good. There are a lot of entrepreneurs in this business, including myself. So I'm not going to knock that, and I'm not going to put that down because it's okay. But Richard Dolan is a respected academic, and he's not ham-fisted about what he does, and he brings the goods. When you talk to Richard Dolan, he has that Dolan-esque encyclopedic knowledge of ufology, and you just can't deny the depth of his knowledge on the subject. And he's just a smart guy all the way around, and he's the real deal. And then you take this cult of personality with the blue chicken people, and the more fantasyland, new agey escapism side of all of this. Excuse me. And I don't know. It's a complete schism within the community, and it's hard to, well, I did a lot of thinking about this, and because I did have CW on the show and we talked about it, and the interview went really well. It just flowed. It was very natural. And then I got all those new subscribers, and I got 1,000 views, and I was just blown away by watching the numbers go up. And I thought, wow, this is great. And then some people are talking to me about controversy. Excuse me. I'll get my throat cleared. The professionals, they have a button for that, but I don't have a button for that. I think about this controversy and this episode that happened, but I don't want to make a career out of constant controversy. And I don't want to make a career out of constantly bagging on someone else. And I set out to start this show as entertainment. And I still maintain that this show is a respite from the rest of the media and the news. That's why I don't do politics on this show. In general, I don't do news topics. The Paradise Fire is different because I have a personal connection to Paradise, California. So I feel like that makes it a little bit different. And Wednesdays are for editorializing. So I'm going to take license to be a little bit looser with my topics on Wednesday, whatever seems relevant, but I'm still going to keep it within ufology and the paranormal generally. That I'm not going to stray from that too much. But I don't want to, I want to do comedy with this show. I want this to be funny, and I want it to be serious at the same time. And I don't want to copy anyone else's formula. I want this show to be its own unique thing. And I wanted to play a little bit, and I hate to say it, I hate to name names or use examples like this, but it's the best way to illustrate it. And you know how when you watch the Late Show with Stephen Colbert, and he can be smart-assy and fun and self-deprecating and do kind of the typical late-night talk show thing, but then he can turn around and he can have some heavyweight guests, and they can get into some serious topics, and it can get deep. But then still kind of in a jokey way, he still kind of frames those conversations with some jokes and some lightheartedness. But but he's able to address those topics at the same time. And I'm trying to find that groove here where I can do that with my guests, where I can kind of poke and prod them a little bit and have a serious interview, but also, just use my sense of humor and let that come through those interviews and through the course of the show. That's what I'm trying to achieve. And I just didn't think that I do have strong opinions about a lot of these things that are going on in ufology and in the paranormal and alternative research world. I do have a lot of opinions, but trying to interject my opinion into a show where it's really about the guest is not fair to the guest. I don't want to do this to the guest. So I think that this Wednesday night show is a good release valve for that. This gives me an opportunity to kind of get that stuff out of my system that I want to comment on. And then that leaves me free on Friday and Saturday to kind of have fun with my guests and goof a little bit. And in terms of this show progressing, I want to talk about something else. I want to get a kind of personal and kind of deep here. And I just want to have some transparency with you, the viewer. And I'll describe my situation. And that might have some let's see, some perspective on what we've been saying about Jimmy Church and some of the other people. And that is, I started this show to make money as a career move. I have a background in the entertainment industry and in professional audio and production. And so I'm using all of my skills to make this show. And this is a career move. I'm doing this for money. I don't have a day job. I am a stay-at-home mom who does this. So I have two jobs, stay-at-home mom and doing this show. And that's a handful. And wow, I'm smacking my lips a lot. I can hear that. It's because I need some water. I don't have any. I started this without any water. That's a rookie move right there, starting out without a drink of water. Anyway, so this is a career move. I have always intended to monetize this channel. I always intended to have fun, and I never intended to ever sell myself as a researcher or an expert in any of these topics. I probably know more about some of this stuff than the average person. But when I sit down and I talk with serious researchers and people who are really passionate about these topics and who have done the dirty work and all the real research, those are the people that really know about all this. I've said it before and I'll say it again, I'm the class clown in all this, but I'm hoping to add some color commentary to the community. And I want to help add some clarity on some of the topics that need clarified. And so in the pursuit of making this monetized show, I wanted it to be successful and I wanted to have a variety of guests. And I work with a marketing company that helps me. And I've made no secret that I work with Pursuing X. I'm very proud to work with Pursuing X. But throughout the running of this, there are these like mainstream shows like Coast to Coast or Jimmy Church where they have guests on the show. And let's be honest, you, the listener, can be listening and this person is saying whatever it is they're saying. And you just know that they're full of shit and this is a lie. And because their stories are too ridiculous, they're too fantastical. It's too much. And then, like I've had nights where I just wanted to be a fly on the wall and see the look on George Norrie's face. It's like, are you really fucking believing this? Are you really buying this? Or are you just letting this person chew up airtime while you kind of collect a paycheck? I don't know. Some of that, I think it can be entertaining, but it's also kind of, if you're shooting for journalism, it's lazy journalism. And I like all the guests that I've had, but a couple of people have come across my path because we're kind of booking people in an old school way where I'm not booking people that I know. I get fed my guests a little bit, and then I do my research and I interview them, and that's common, that's typical, that's the showbiz standard, that's the show standard. But a couple people have been on this show that I didn't completely buy what they were selling, and I'm not going to name names, But the reason I didn't call them out in the moment was because we asked very nicely if they would appear on the show, and they agreed, and they came on the show. And I'm not going to be a complete asshole and bait and switch someone and ask them to come onto the show and then do some ambush journalism and attack what they're saying and turn it into something that no one anticipated. If I were going to have someone on this show that I didn't believe or that I wanted to debate or challenge what they're saying, I would talk to them in advance and say, look, I want to debate you on my show. I don't believe you. And they would know what they would be getting into. I just think it's shitty to lure someone onto your show to ambush them, whether you believe them or not, no matter what their story is. I don't believe in that. I have some ethics in this situation. I was a newspaper reporter for a short while at one time, and I have adhered to journalistic ethics, and I believe in that. I really do believe in that in terms of doing this kind of thing. So that's the truth of the matter. I've had a couple of people on, I didn't totally buy it, but I was nice and I was polite, and I still tried to ask probing questions or ask questions that would shed some light on either the thought process or the experience of that person. And so now I come to this crossroads because I have heavily criticized Corey Good, Emery Smith, and David Wilcock. I've made jokes about them on this show. And if you haven't heard it, if you're new to the show, go back to the early episodes, especially with William Poland, because I was cracking all kinds of jokes about those guys in 5 questions in 5 minutes. So if you want to hoot, if you want to laugh at my jokes about those guys, go back to those earlier episodes. And anyway, I don't know. I lost my train of thought. Shit. This is what happens when you're live. This is what happens. Another rookie move. Rookie move number 2. No. So, wow, I really did lose my train of thought. Let's see here. Where was I going with that? Let me look at the chat room. I see BB Blog laughing. Save the fluff for Thanksgiving. I like that. Exception liking Secure Team. You know what? I am entertained by the Secure Team videos, and I'm not saying that they're worthy of deep research status, but I'm a production person at heart, and I'm fascinated with the way that he puts his videos together. And I want to know what software he's using. I want to know how he's doing all that, because it's whether the content is weak or not, his videos are just slick as hell. And I don't think anyone can deny Tyler's prowess at creating something that's visually appealing. And the guy's got like 2 million viewers. And, like I said, I think some of the material's kind of weak and sometimes, but goddamn, those are beautiful videos. And his music is always kind of happening. So I still give props to him. So yeah, in terms of that. But anyway, I made a lot of jokes about Corey Good and Emery Smith and those guys. And I think about the direction that I want this show to go. And I don't want to be a hypocrite. I don't want to criticize Corey Good and Emery Smith and David Wilcock and then have someone on my show that I don't believe. I think I would be a hypocrite if I continued to have people like that on my show after I have spoken out against these other people and criticized them. I don't think that I want to just have a guest for the sake of having a guest to do what the big boys are doing, Jimmy and Coast to Coast, where they'll let, anybody with a goofy story or, kind of a half-baked book come on and take up an hour or two, because those shows run very frequently and they have a lot of hours of programming and they need to fill those slots. And I don't have that problem. I want to be consistent in the broadcast of this show, but I want to do quality over quantity. I would rather do fewer shows and have higher quality entertainment and interviews and commentary than to just throw a bunch of shit at the wall and see what sticks. And, I don't know. I'm just not about that. So, I'm going to have to, I'm doing some soul searching right now. I'm going to have to look at who I'm having on the show a little closer, or switch to the challenge them more. If I'm going to start having people on that I might not completely agree with, if they're going to push that agenda, then I might have to challenge them a little bit. But this is, on the other hand, flip it around. This is supposed to be comedy and kind of light. Friday and Saturday night supposed to be fun and kind of a respite from the heavy duty shit. So, I think it's incumbent upon me to select guests that have integrity and to, I guess, in the end, and I'll tell you why I'm thinking this, because I agonized over Jimmy Church. And I'm going to say it again. I said it to CW, but I'll repeat it. It bears worth repeating. I interviewed Jimmy Church at Contact in the Desert this past June, and he said he would give me 10 minutes, and he was very tired. And he did 24 minutes, and he was very jovial, very personable. He was helpful. He gave me advice, and he was just really good to me. And we had some communications after that, and I called into his show at one point, and that went very well. And then I called into his show, and I will say this: I did not call Jimmy Church's show to troll him. I did not. I was asking an authentic question. I asked it in a weird way. I kind of framed it as an analogy, so I used a different, set of puppets for my story, but I was trying to illustrate basically that Corey Good, David Wilcock, that bunch are snake oil salesmen, and that they're damaging the community. But I was kind of colorful in my description asking that, and famously or infamously, Jimmy Church quickly deflected my question and gave it to Richard, and Richard knew what I was doing, Richard Dolan. And Richard knew what I was getting at, and so it opened a door for Richard to give kind of a sharper answer to maybe what everyone else was wondering. And so I mentioned C.W. Chanter's name on the air on Jimmy Church's show, and so that kind of got the ball rolling. That I had put my hat in the ring with that. I had taken a side. I had let my opinion be known, and even though having a closer association with Jimmy Church might help my show, I don't want to endorse Corey Good, David Wilcock, or Emery Smith, or anyone who has stories like that. So I'm agonized. I like Jimmy personally. He was very good to me. And I think he's just a very good professional broadcaster. I think he's got a good style. Say what you will about it. It's his show, the music and all that stuff. That's subjective taste. That's up to you. But in terms of producing a very slick professional show that's very organized, and him being a very knowledgeable host, he does an excellent job. And I don't think anyone can question that. What I question is his alliance with these people that are just kind of scammers. And I'm just going to say it. I think they're scammers. And it makes me wonder. I guess I'm forced to wonder if Jimmy really endorses that, if Jimmy wants a piece of that. So he's going to play that game and endorse those guys and push that along in an effort to maybe get some of that Gaia TV money or whatever. I don't know. I would like to think not. And that's pure speculation on my part. I cannot speak for Jimmy Church, and I don't really know him. And maybe on the one hand, it's improper for me to speculate about his internal thinking or motivations. But at the same time, this is our community, and these people are public figures. And the difference is, while all of you out there, whoever has kind of a private life and are just on the sidelines or watching all of this from a distance, it's one thing. But if you put your hat in the ring, if you have a show, or if you write a book, or you start doing lectures, or you start calling into shows, if you jump out into the public arena, then you should expect to mix it up just like everyone else does in the public arena, and be prepared to have some thick skin and deal with the consequences of that. And I know that other people have dealt with this, but look what just happened. Joe from ah, excuse me, my tongue is sticking to the top of my mouth. My God. I wish it was. I'm basically alone here, and I don't have anyone to bring me any water. That's a big whiny thing. But uh, I can hear it. I'm sorry. I'm going to try to stop making the smack on my lips noise. That's horrible. That's pretty funny. Damn, I got sidetracked again. Having not having a drink of water is really tough here. Where was I going with that? Let me look in the chat room. Who can remind me? Oh yeah, Jimmy. I don't know if Jimmy is a real believer with those guys, or if it's a shrewd attempt to make money, or a little bit of both. Like I said, I can't speculate. I don't know Jimmy Church personally, and yeah, I guess that my point was they are open to criticism and scrutiny because they have jumped into the public arena. Just like me. It hasn't happened yet, but sooner or later, someone will come along and tear me down because I'm transgender, or they'll tear me down because they think I'm stupid or I'm fat or whatever. Someone will come along and try to tear me down with something because there are just trolls out there. And that's just reality. And I had to think about that before I started this show. And I took that into account. It was like, am I willing to deal with whatever crap comes my way because I get out here in the public and I jump in the public arena? And I said, yes, I have a thick enough skin. I can take it. I've had more than 5 years of therapy, and I'm ready. I'm ready. So here I am. So I'm ready to deal with that. And I think that, excuse me, that it's fair to comment on Jimmy Church supporting these guys that are damaging our community. And I don't have a beef with Jimmy Church or David Wilcock or any of those guys personally. I don't know them. I don't believe them, but I don't know them. I've never met them. And I have no personal animus towards them. I just don't believe their story. And I think they're damaging our community by spreading lies and being opportunistic in the way they deal with the people that follow them. Is it a cult? Joe from the Carolinas has been calling it a cult. Cliff High refers to it as a cult. C.W. Chanter refers to it as a cult. Yes, I'm just name dropping all over the fucking place here tonight. I'm going to be honest with you. I haven't followed their movement enough to myself personally say it's a cult. I don't know enough about it. And I'll tell you why. I never learned a whole lot about it because as soon as I heard their bullshit stories, I just kind of stopped listening. And I moved on to the people who really do know what they're talking about. My interest falls with the Richard Dolan's, Cheryl Costa, Peter Lavenda, people like that, people of that ilk. That's who I pay attention to. I've only got so many hours in the day. I've only got so much time for this stuff, and I see no reason to waste my time listening about blue chickens, ascension, and some kind of higher cosmic consciousness that's going to transform the planet. I just don't have time for that crap. I don't. It's fucking pie in the sky, new age, woo woo. It's bullshit. And I think some of it is kind of a disinfo thing. Richard Dolan has spoken recently, as have others, about, I think Dark Journalist just did a piece about the CIA connection to the New Age movement. But I will tell you this, the first person that I know of that spoke on that topic was Richard Dolan. Richard Dolan was the first person to publicly create some links, demonstrate some links between the CIA and the New Age movement and how that affected people. And that also affected the supply of LSD and the whole hippie movement in the LA scene in the mid to late 60s. There is some evidence out there that part of those movements were instigated by the CIA to sow discord and or chaos. And I think that might have backfired on them. But that's not what this show is about tonight. I'm not going to keep going on that. But so that's the scoop on that. I am going to be taking a look at my guests that are coming up. And I feel like I have an obligation to you, the viewer. Tonight you're a listener, but generally you're a viewer. And I have an obligation to you to bring people on my show that are worthy of a public platform. I just don't think I can bring on some cat that is selling a story I don't believe and they got a book to sell. And so I'm going to come on and fluff them for a half hour just to fill up time. Because you know why? The number one reason why not to do that, because that's what commercial enterprises do. That's what corporations do with broadcasting. They have always done that. They have always filled it with a bunch of fluffy shit to fill up time. And the viewer, the watcher, the listener, the consumer of media has had no control over that until now. And now it has been truly democratized with the internet. You can choose what to watch. You can choose who to follow. You can choose how much content you want to watch. You don't have to watch the fluff. You can stay serious all the time. You can go deep. You can go light. You can avoid all the heavy stuff. You can do all that because you finally, the viewer, the consumer of media, have direct control over the content of what you want to see and hear. And those things affect your opinions and your viewpoints and your outlook on the world. And this great democracy of this has leveled the playing field. That's what gives people like myself a platform to talk, and at least gives me the same opportunities to reach out to people or to achieve some commercial success in this, just like anyone else. You know, if this show fails or doesn't make money or my career doesn't take off because of this show, that's my fault. That's on me. I conceived of this. And if it doesn't succeed, then it's something that I've done wrong or overlooked or not done. But I'm also going to do my best to not let that happen. So that's why I've been pivoting a little bit and changing and adapting as the circumstances warranted and tinkered with the format of this show. And I just don't want to be desperate. I don't want to bring someone on this show that I don't believe. I owe it to you, the consumer, the viewer. I don't want to say consumer. That's kind of a cold corporate term too. So let's throw that out. Let you, the viewer, the subscriber, the you know, you're going to sense the bullshit first. You're going to be the first one to want to tune into my show and maybe be accustomed to a certain level of interviews or a certain level of academic or journalistic standard in the interviews. And then if I bring someone on with some crazy ass stupid story, then it just kind of cheapens the really good guess, if that makes any sense. It cheapens the overall message. And I don't have to do what Coast to Coast does. I don't have to bring on every motherfucker with a stupid story. I don't have to do that. This is my show and I can pick and choose. And I am in no way, I will say this, I'm not pointing my finger at Pursuing X at all. They do an excellent job in helping me. They help keep me on track. And I'm one of those creative persons. I'm one of those creative people that kind of bounces off the walls, and I have a lot of creativity. I have a lot of ideas, but I also it's a challenge for me to have enough self-discipline to channel that, and that's part of what I've been working on. And working with this marketing company and working with Pursuing X, you know, it makes me up my game, and I don't know. I have responsibilities to other people because we make appointments and we have certain agendas to do. So I'm not blaming Pursuing X for my guess. I am the one who pulled the trigger and said, let's just fish with a really big net and see who we can get in here. And only in light of me commenting so heavily on Corey Good, and when the CW Chanter stuff started coming up and Joe from the Carolinas got doxxed. And then I spoke out. Once I spoke out, once I jumped out in the public arena and I took a side, I now have an ethical and moral obligation to follow suit on my show. I can't call Jimmy Church or Coast to Coast out on having flaky guests if I'm going to turn around and do the same thing. So I owe you, if you're going to spend your time and attention listening or watching this show, then I owe it to you to give you a quality show and give you a quality guest and not just some fluffy new age bullshit. I would rather sit and talk to you by myself, quite honestly, than to bring on someone who's got some kind of bullshit story. That's just me. I hope you appreciate that. I don't want to do that to you. I feel there's one thing I know about these shows, all of them. People who have subscribers, people who have viewers, they have earned those viewers. They have earned those views. They have earned those subscribers. And that's what I'm doing. We are doing this the right way. This is a very much a grassroots kind of effort. This show is growing organically. There's nothing fake about my views or subscribers. I would never do that. Not even for money, because there's a little bit of pride on the line in this kind of endeavor where you want it to succeed. And just like any other kind of business, you're going to try to get this thing up off the ground or get it flying and hope that it goes on to have a nice long life. But we'll see. You know, it's the Wild West on YouTube right now. A lot of people are kind of catching on to this wave of vlogging and so on and so forth. And so it's crowded out there. That's why I always say, if you're spending your time listening to my show, thank you. I appreciate it, because there is a lot of competition for your time and attention. And I recognize that. So that is my commitment to you, the viewer, the subscriber of this show. I will not bring bullshit guests on here just to waste a half hour of your time. There's got to be some there has to be some redeeming value for having anyone on this show. It's got to be an opportunity to learn something or gain an insight or get some information, something. There has to be something useful about it. I'm not gonna help someone sell a fucking book that I don't believe in. I'm not gonna do that. I owe it to you. That's my commitment to you. So that's what I have to say on that. The whole doxing thing, I will say, and I'm not speaking out of school, Joe from the Carolinas has agreed to come on the show, but we need to work out a time. So we are working behind the scenes to schedule a time for Joe from the Carolinas. And I look forward to having that conversation with him. But he is in high demand right now. And I think rightfully so. I did happen to see Joe's show on the fire in Paradise, California, and in Southern California. And I had commented as soon as that fire started. I had commented on my show with William Poland last week. And so I'm not jumping on any kind of bandwagon by doing this. I'm not going to talk about the fire because other people are, or as a way to be relevant. I want to talk about the fire in Paradise, California, because that's the first place I lived in California. I had a California ID with a Paradise, California address. So I lived there. I had an address there. I worked there. I had friends there. And the industry that I was working in, believe it or not, I know that this will be hard to believe, but I was helping cultivate medical marijuana up in the area. And it was all done above board. The local authorities, my employer was personal friends with the county sheriff, and the county sheriff was at the time very good about he knew who the good players were and he knew who the bad actors were. And so some of that went on, but yes, I was working in the cultivation of medical marijuana up around Magalia, in between Magalia and Paradise. And that's part of the story that the mainstream media is not going to tell you. And that might be part of the story that other people who don't know are going to tell you. There are a lot of marijuana growers up in that area. And the way some of that works is they cultivate up in Northern California, and then they either have drivers take it down to Southern California or to the more populous areas, San Francisco and the LA area, buy a lot of the medicine that's being produced up in that area. And so that's how it's done. A lot of growers have their situation uh, up in the mountains, and then they go down in the city and they hit up a couple of dispensaries and they unload all of their medicine. They get their distribution done. They're done. That's it. They're done for the year. And I was deeply involved in that process. Um, and I am not involved in that industry at this time. I stopped. I walked away from all of it at one point. I got completely burned out on the medical marijuana industry, and I walked away from it. And what I do in my life now has nothing to do with that. I just I had my experiences, and I had an incredible experience. And I'm not going to spill the beans here, but I have quite a story. I may write a book or do something about my experience in the medical marijuana industry in California, because I had some adventure, let's say. But I'm sitting here right now talking to you, and I have a smile on my face because I remember how beautiful it was in Paradise. And I had grown up in the Midwest, and all I knew was flat cornfields, soybean fields, and farms of that nature, and wheat, corn, wheat, soybeans, flat, hot, humid, blah blah blah. So when I moved out west to start my life over and to reinvent myself, I moved to Northern California, and there I was. I found myself working in that industry. I did the whole bit. I got paid to trim when it was time to trim. I helped clear trees. I helped grow. We were starting some plants indoors and getting them big, and then finishing them outdoors, and getting them big and tall. And you're always debating about the quality between indoor and outdoor grown marijuana. And so the whole agricultural aspect of that was going on as well, right? So I'm living up there. I'm living in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada mountains. And when I went to sleep at night, I would, for a segment of that time, not the whole time, I lived in an RV. And they had some security problems. Someone had come and stolen from them at some point. So I was working there and living there in an RV. And it's not like one of those shady deals where you hear about, national forest where there are traps set up and shit like that. That is not what was going on here. This was not some shady operation in the woods. This was someone's house. We were on a property. They had licensing. They were a proper grower of medical marijuana. So this was a legit situation. They had just had problems with thieves. So there I was living in this RV, and every night as I went to sleep, I could hear the Feather River running down at the bottom of the mountain. I was kind of up on the side, and I was very close to Sawmill Peak. If anyone knows that area up there, Sawmill Peak. And I posted about this on my social media on Facebook. I once rode a dirt bike all the way up to the top of Sawmill Peak, and there's a fire watch station up there. And of course, it was unmanned at the time, and it was all locked up, and you couldn't get into it. But from Sawmill Peak, you could look out across, and miles away, you could see the very tip top of Mount Lassen, and you could see out over all of the valley. And I just posted a video on Twitter and on my Facebook page, and some guy has a video that's got drone footage of the area. So if you want to see how beautiful it was, how beautiful it will be again. Take a look at that video on my social media. Not to do anything for me, but if you want to see the beauty and the majesty of that part of Northern California, you really need to take a look at that video. And I had I'll get personal. I had gone through a divorce, and I was also realizing that I was transgender. And so I had all this going on. My marriage had ended. I had moved away from the Midwest. I had changed my environment. I was changing on the inside, and I was trying to figure out how to sort all of this out and make my life make some kind of sense. And there I was working outside in the dirt. I was digging holes. I was watering plants. I was moving brush. And it was just like some kind of montage in a movie where you see, you know, like someone goes for training, or they make some kind of change, or, you know, some kind of personal growth happens in this montage. And but that really happened to me in real time. I was splitting wood. I split this tremendously huge pile of wood with a log splitter, but it took me weeks. And I was able to work out all that frustration and confusion that I was going through, and it helped clear my thoughts those days of working up there by Magalia, and hearing the Feather River, smelling the air up there, and just being in tune with all that. And you know, Paradise was just down the road. It's You go up the Skyway from Chico, and there's only a road that goes up and a road that comes down. And if you keep going up the Skyway and you keep going, you're just going back into the mountains. There is no civilization that way to go to. You are only going deeper into the wilderness as you go through Paradise, up through Magalia, and then further up the Skyway. The pavement ends at one point, and then it turns to dirt, and then it's just rugged trails out into the mountains. All between there and Mount Lassen, all of that wilderness. And it's just gorgeous. And I did so much soul searching there, and I would do meditations on this rock by a creek. And the the beauty of that level of nature was something I had never experienced, and it really moved my soul. And like I said, the town of Paradise has been a town of 27,000 people, and it it was obviously a small town, but you know, I would go into town and get stuff, and I spent a lot of time there. I spent about a year there, and that's where I got my shit together. Was up in Paradise and up around Magalia. So when I saw that this fire had broken out in Paradise, and then the severity of that fire grew just over the course of 24 hours, you know, from like a fire in Paradise to like Paradise as a city, or as a town rather, is gone, has been destroyed. And I have scoured YouTube for footage to see if I can recognize anything that I knew up there. And I have seen a couple of landmarks that I knew about, but I can also tell you that I know for a fact, based on the maps that I've seen and the footage that I've seen, that the people that I lived with, the people that I worked with, the people that I was growing marijuana with, they all lost everything. Where we were growing marijuana legally, thank you, was destroyed. Their house, they lost everything. My employer was a very sweet woman, and she was a fantastic artist. And she had such a beautiful house filled with fantastic artwork. And it was always a pleasure to be in her house. And the people that I lived with, that I worked with, they had a modest residence, but I will tell you this: I would take a modest residence in a beautiful location any day. I don't need a big fancy house if I live in a place that's majestic and beautiful. And that's what that was like. They had a humble home, but I was sleeping on the couch, and I was working with them. They were my coworkers, and they were just helping me out. And I made that human connection there, and I got to know the local community. And I am not a wishy-washy person. I am not easily moved by stories in the news. I'm pretty damn cynical when it comes to that stuff. But I cried when I heard about what had happened up there. And you know, I know that there's about 50 people who died, and I can't help but wonder if people that I knew lost their lives up there. And I don't know. And unless there's some kind of official list of names published, I may never know. But I do know for a fact that those people lost everything in that fire. I'm sorry. I did not intend to cry on my show, but it's upsetting. That's a beautiful town up there, and those are good people. I'm sorry. That's embarrassing, but that's what's been going on with me this week is watching that news and at the same time rejoicing in the success of the episode with CW and enjoying seeing the channel grow and see some life pumped into this show. And I don't know. That's just where I'm at. I guess to bookend this a little bit is the Friday and Saturday show is more of the entertainment talk show kind of thing. You know, sometimes it could get deep and sometimes it's going to be stupid and silly, and that's okay. That's what I want it to be. Wednesday night's probably a little more serious, a little more like this editorial commentary. That way I can break it up a little bit and get some of this stuff out of my system. I enjoy doing this. I like doing this editorializing. I enjoy this. I just think there's a time and a place for it, and I don't think I don't want to work within a format that does this with guests. It doesn't really allow the space for that kind of communication, I don't think. But Joe from the Carolinas will be coming on this show sometime in the relatively near future. And look for my other guests. And I'm still talking to CW behind the scenes. And I think in terms of the doxing thing, I think there will still be more fallout. But I think loose lips sink ships and people are staying mum. And I think we're all going to have to sit on the sidelines and wait and see what happens. I think something will happen. I think it might get a little bit ugly. Get a little bit ugly on the side, as Frank Zappa used to say. I'm a big Frank Zappa fan. But I will hit the happy music. Who can be sad with that song on? I can't. I don't know about you, but I can't. I hear that and I'm just like, famine, poverty, war, the happy music is on, right? Thank you so much for tuning in, for watching, for listening. I appreciate it. If you haven't already, please hit the like button. Please hit subscribe. Please share the video. You wouldn't believe what I'm doing right now. I'm trying to be slick, right? And my screensaver came up. And I can't turn the show off until I get the screensaver off. And there it is. And right at the end of the song, perfect timing. Thank you so much. And look for us this Friday and Saturday. We'll have guests and we'll be promoting it on Facebook and Twitter. Thank you so much for your time. Everyone have a great week. Prepare for the holidays and hug your loved ones and let them know you love them. And thanks for your time. Good night, everybody.